The notification system within FLDIGI is arguably one of the coolest aspects of that program, and it's what keeps me coming back to that software despite some of its irritating shortcomings. So head on over to our Pi checklist and scroll to the bottom of section 6, and you'll find a link titled Here's How to Make Custom Audio Alerts in FLDIGI. When you click on that, it'll bring you to a post that I put up on the DigiRig help forum, and this is going to give you step-by-step instructions for how to set up audio alerts, essentially ringtones. We're going to simulate that text messaging experience with our off-grid digital communication system so that you and your family members don't just have to sit around at the computer all day checking and rechecking to see if someone sent you a message. You will get an audible alert. But it doesn't end there. We're also going to use this notification system within FLDIGI to execute command line instructions on your Raspberry Pi remotely. So from miles and miles away, you'll be able to reboot your Pi, restart FLDIGI, start new programs. Really, the limit is just anything you could type in and execute in a terminal window on your Raspberry Pi can be executed through this notification system in FLDIGI. So let's get started by setting up just a really simple ringtone within FLDIGI, and we'll increase in complexity as we go. So scroll down and you'll see a picture of the notifications window that you'll find in FLDIGI. And the custom text search here is ring, but you'll have to forgive me. I made a little bit of a typo here. The actual audio file is not called ring. That's not something that FLDIGI recognizes. But I often insert these mistakes into my work intentionally just because to attempt perfection is an affront to God. But scroll down a little further and you'll see a list of the audio files that do come prepackaged with FLDIGI. So we'll use the one called phone. All right, let's get into our Raspberry Pi. And you'll see, actually, I'll show you here, my screen has changed just a little bit since you saw it last, and you can add these hotkeys to different programs you like by right-clicking on the taskbar and going to Add and Remove Panel Items, the Application Launch Bar, and then Preferences, and you can move any program here on your system over to that Application Launch Bar. But here in FLDIGI, we're going to go to Configure and then Notifications, and here's the window. So we can start by selecting Custom Text Search, and I can deselect Ignore Duplicates. That doesn't really matter. So anytime somebody sends us the word ring, we will set it up to play that phone command. So the text looks like alert, colon, and then phone in lowercase, and then close bracket. Click Add to bring that down here. Not Update. Update is if we need to make some changes to this. If we make another intentional error, we would then update it down here. So I'm going to close that. Now here is the secret sauce. You need to select Spot. Make sure that's green right there. Otherwise, the whole thing won't work. And we're going to send a command to my Yukon using the exclamation point to return exactly what I type here following back to us. So I'm just going to type ring. And I will pause so that you don't have to sit through this whole thing, and you will hopefully hear the ringtone come through. And here it comes. Now let's start stacking up the complexity. You'll notice that when we set up our macros, I put this pound sign. The pound sign triggers the receiving system to send an acknowledgement that it received the message. So what we can do is set up a notification to let us know when just a simple message comes through. So let's add another one. We can just edit this, and the command that will come through is a colon and a pound. That's how it will appear on our window. And I'm going to change this one to the dinner, I believe it's underscore. Let's just double check that before I make a mistake here again on purpose. Dinner underscore bell. We'll add, close that down. And I'm going to trigger my Yukon again to send us that information. So when the message comes through, you'll see it will print a colon with that pound sign, and then we'll get our ding dong. Now, astute observers will notice that my acknowledgement printed here. So I'm going to highlight that, copy, and sometimes it's really nice to get a little audio confirmation when an acknowledgement has been sent back to us. So let's get back into notifications and paste that in. And I put a space here in front of the ACK because that's how it comes through. And also ACK is a part of a lot of words that you'll see. And I'm going to pick a little bit different sound, the RTTY bell, R-T-T-Y bell. It's just a little pleasant ding, and we will add, not update, close. And in this case, I'm just going to send a message to my Yukon, and on the other side it will play the audio alert. But when we get the acknowledgement back, we will hear a ping. You are not by any means limited to this short little list of sound files that come prepackaged with FLDIGI. This is just a convenient list to select from while you're getting started. In fact, you could use any WAV or MP3 file that you download onto your system. I like to make a folder within FLDIGI called Clips, and that's where I put my sound files, and I downloaded one here for us to use. This could be anywhere on your computer, really. I'm going to right-click and select Copy Paths. That's going to give us that routing information to where we save the file. We'll go back to Configure and Notifications, and we will just edit one of these, and we'll go with the word HAL 9000. And instead of Ready Bell, we'll delete that out, and I'll just Control-V paste in that routing information for the HAL 9000 clip, and we'll click Add. Close that. Now, anytime one of our other systems send us the word HAL 9000, it's going to play that audio clip, and of course, this is just a silly little example of what it's capable of. You don't have to do this, but I want to show you what we can do with FLDIGI.
I am a HAL 9000 computer.
Well, HAL 9000 is all fun and games, but let's set up something a little bit more practical. And what we're going to do here is prepare for two scenarios. The first being if your signal conditions deteriorate down to like -15 decibels below the noise floor where FSQ can't decode that, we'll have to switch to a different mode that's more robust like Thor 4 or Thor Micro. Unfortunately, Thor and the other FLDIGI modes don't have the ability to bounce back an acknowledgement that your message was received by the person you're talking to. So we're going to have to build that. Second, if your wife or whoever kicks the waterfall selector off for the 19th time that day, we're going to have to use RSIDs to kick her, whoever, off onto a different mode, and then set something up to change it back to FSQ. Unfortunately, we can't just send an RSID through FSQ because FSQ won't send RSID. So we'll have to kick it off to a different mode and then kick it back onto FSQ. We're going to build that. We're going to knock out those two birds with one stone. On all of your systems, you'll need to select RxID, and that is so it receives the Reed-Solomon identifier. If this isn't selected, it will ignore any Reed-Solomon identifiers that come in. And right-click and select Passband so that it's not just looking inside the selector, but also here in the weeds where certain people like to kick the waterfall selector off constantly. Only the transmitting system will need TXID selected, and we'll need this set up today with TXID, but your other systems won't have TXID generally selected unless somebody is there actively trying to troubleshoot something by sending those TXIDs out. Okay, let's get back into notifications. We'll start by building our test command, and this will send back an acknowledgement to us whenever the destination terminal receives a certain string of characters, and this lets us know that the other receiving computer has actually received and decoded our transmission correctly. So I like to trigger that off of something that I would never natively type, like all caps, test home. That's just what it's going to be for this terminal. Maybe my portable that we're going to transmit to here in a minute is test portable. And then this down here is going to be a little bit more involved. So I'm going to delete all that. And first we want the system, whenever it hears this test command, to wait. And I want it to wait for 30 seconds if I'm using a really slow mode like Thor 4 or Thor Micro. Because after it receives test home, I'm still transmitting. In fact, I'm transmitting my call sign after that. So I want it to wait and finish listening before it starts talking back to me. And I'm going to start with TX. Then after it waits 30 seconds, it will start transmitting. Do 2 spaces here, and it's going to transmit my call. This is my call sign as FLDIGI has received it. And then at the end, RX. Tells it to stop transmitting and to begin listening again. So let's add that. Now, when we're all done with that, I need to be able to change this back to FSQ. In the case of somebody throwing the waterfall selector off, when we change back to FSQ, it's going to drive it right back onto 1500, and then we'll be good to go. So let's just lowercase change FSQ. In this case, I'm going to delete all this, and the command for that is just modem FSQ. I learned all this by right-clicking on the macro buttons and just going through that list, by the way. Let's add that, and let's give this a test. I decided I'd like you to see this from the recipient's perspective because I think it'll more clearly explain what we're actually doing here. So, regardless of if conditions have just deteriorated to the point that FSQ no longer works, or somebody launched the selector over here off of 1500 on the waterfall and they can't hear anything coming through at that central point, this will address both those situations. So, I'm transmitting from my portable bag, and the first thing you'll notice is the RSIDs coming through, and that's going to flip us over to that Thor micro mode. Thor micro is great because it punches through those weak conditions, but it is so very slow. It's going to send us that test home custom text search command, and that's going to then trigger us to send the response. Give it just a bit of time here. Okay, here it comes, and once we receive this, you will notice we are now waiting 30 seconds. The system just paused because the transmitter is still sending its call sign. I don't want to run over the top of that. So we're going to wait that 30 seconds, and then our system will automatically send the acknowledgement, which is just our call sign in this case. That lets the person testing the system at the other end know this terminal is actually working. It's just the conditions were a little too low for FSQ, or somebody knocked off the selector on the waterfall. And here's our transmission going through now. When it's time to reset everything back to normal, the person testing the system on the other end is going to send that command change FSQ. That's going to switch us back to the FSQ mode, and it should realign the waterfall right back at the center where we need it. Didn't even wait for it to finish. Just flipped us right back over, and you can see we're right back to 1500 on the waterfall. Okay, now we're going to get into the real fun stuff, and that is running command line remotely through the notification system of FLDIGI. Let's start by setting up just a simple restart command for FLDIGI. It's going to close FLDIGI and then reopen it. And this could be helpful if, let's say, you are having some RFI issues that you're still sorting out. We had that a lot at the beginning of our journey here into digital comms. And if we restarted the program, everything would just clear up. So I'm going to do restart FLDIGI home, and I think it's perfectly normal to have an authentication code, although we can't disguise the content of our traffic. I think it's very clear what I want to do, and we're going to add the authentication code Delta-5. We'll just see what that happens. So the command we want is not there. It's down here at run program. And you would actually use this to open up a program if you desire, but it will execute command line too. That's pretty cool. Sudo pkill FLDIGI ampersand, and I want it to sleep 5 seconds. We'll give it a 5-second break. Then, once that's all executed correctly, we'll reopen FLDIGI. We'll add that. Now, from my portable bag, I'm going to fire that off to us right now, and we'll see what happens. Well, half works. Let's see if it reopens. Victory! Now let's say we've got a really big problem that we need to fix remotely, and we decide that rebooting the computer is just the best way of sorting it out. And we can do this remotely because FLDIGI a lot of times can hear even if it freezes up on transmit. So let's go to notifications, and we'll just change this to sudo reboot. Just going to reboot the computer. And I think we'll do reboot home and then the same Delta-5 authentication code. We'll add that and close. Now, I can't really reboot on camera here for you, but I want to show you a method that I've found to be really successful at reopening FLDIGI at boot, and I detailed that here in section 4 of the Pi checklist. We're going to copy this, sudo nano, and then this is where the desktop file that we're going to be building is going to be stored. I realize that desktop file makes you think that it's on the desktop, but it's just called desktop file, and we're going to put it in this auto start folder. So let's get back in here. We'll open up a terminal window. We're going to paste this in. But before we press enter, I want to change this your file name .desktop thing because that's silly. We'll call it FLDIGI start .desktop. Enter. Okay, the rest we need to paste in one by one. Unfortunately, we're going to tell it that it's a desktop entry. Its name is FLDIGI. And finally, some bash commands. Now, you have a little bit of variability in here for what you can make it do. I've got this set up that at boot, we're going to be really nice to the computer and give it 30 seconds to load everything else before we blast open FLDIGI. You could just blast open FLDIGI if you wanted. You could change it to 10 seconds or whatever. I've used a variety of different delay times and it's all worked. But here we're going to press Control X, Y, and Enter. And now, anytime I boot up this computer or reboot it, it's going to open FLDIGI after about 30-second wait.